Welcome to the Weekly Files. On September 19, 2025, President Trump signed a proclamation requiring a $100,000 annual fee for new H-1B visa applications. This fee is much higher than existing fees, which include things like the registration fee, D4vd, plus petition filing fees and other costs depending on employer and status. The executive action also includes directives to adjust prevailing wage levels under the H-1B program to prevent undercutting U.S. worker wages. New Gold Card residency pathway requiring a $1 million gift, or for companies, $2 million to sponsor an employee for wealthy foreigners. A Platinum Card visa priced at $5 million, which would allow holders to spend up to 270 days per year in the U.S. with exemptions from U.S. taxes on non-U.S. income. The Trump administration says its rationale for the steep fee is meant to curb abuses of the H-1B program, particularly cases where foreign workers might be used to replace Americans, or where wages are lower than what U.S. workers would get. There is also a stated goal to prioritize high-skilled, high-paid foreign workers by making it costly for employers to use H-1Bs for entry-level or lower-paid roles. The proclamation states that petitions from abroad, i.e. from workers outside the US, must include the payment, and there are mechanisms for verification and enforcement. Possible impacts and concerns for this policy include tech sector and employers. The change could drastically raise the cost for companies used to hiring via H-1B visas, especially for roles that are not very high paid, or where the worker doesn't bring very specialized skills. Lower number of H-1Bs. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick suggested that many potential H-1B petitions will no longer make sense economically under the new fee, meaning fewer applications and approved visas. Legal challenges. Critics argue the fee increase may be legally dubious, especially given Congress's constitutional role in setting immigration policy and fees. Some senior former officials have called the policy lawless or impractical. Talent and innovation risks. Universities, research institutions, and companies might face hardship recruiting global talent. International students, or those who want to work in the US, might rethink their plans. Some worry that startups, which rely on global talent, could suffer. Appeals and exemptions. The policy includes possible case-by-case exemptions if deemed in the national interest. But those exemptions' scope and how they'll be administered is not yet fully clear. What's unclear and certain thing to watch for are how the courts will respond. There will likely be lawsuits or injunctions. How exactly the prevailing wage rules will be changed in practice, and whether those changes will affect existing visa holders or only new applicants. On September 19, 2025, speaking from the Oval Office, President Donald Trump claimed that the media is overwhelmingly critical of him, and that when 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that kind of imbalance means that it's no longer free speech. He said this in the context of what he perceives as unfair treatment by media outlets, particularly given that he won the 2024 election. Yet, he argued media coverage does not reflect that mandate or support. What prompted the remarks? Trump's statement followed Disney's decision to indefinitely suspend late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, after Kimmel made controversial remarks about the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Simultaneously, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, a Trump appointee, suggested regulatory action could be taken against ABC, Disney's network, and possibly other shows like The View. These threats came after criticism by Kimmel. Some reactions and political fallout. Trump defended Carr, calling him a great American, and said he believed Carr was acting out of concern over airwaves being used illegally and incorrectly. Some pushback came from unexpected quarters. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called for Carr's resignation. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, warned that the FCC threats were dangerous as hell, drawing parallels to political censorship. Some of the key issues raised were free speech versus press criticism. Trump's argument hinges on the idea that extremely negative or one-sided media coverage steps outside of what the First Amendment protects. The question arises, is negative or unfair reporting necessarily outside protected speech? Legally, the First Amendment doesn't require fairness in media, though defamation and other specific limitations do exist. Regulatory threats. The involvement of the FCC, regulating broadcast licenses among other things, brings up concerns about government pressure on media content. When a government agency suggests revoking or penalizing media organizations, constitutional questions about press freedom naturally follow. For legal and constitutional context, the First Amendment protects a very broad category of speech, including speech critical of public officials. However, it does not protect defamation, incitement to violence, or true threats, among narrow categories. Negative coverage, even if biased or unfair, is generally within the scope of protected speech. Regulatory agencies like the FCC have certain powers, but those are constrained by law and often subject to judicial review. Any regulatory action based on viewpoint runs a strong risk of being struck down as unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination. The implications and significance of this: press freedom under scrutiny. This episode adds to broader concerns among journalists, free speech advocates, and legal experts about potential erosion of protections for critical media and dissent. Public perception. The rhetoric that free speech is no longer free may be intended to shift perceptions of bias, fairness, and legitimacy of media institutions. In another news, on September 8, 2025 in California, a decomposing body was discovered in the front trunk of a Tesla that had been impounded at a tow lot in Hollywood. The vehicle, found abandoned on a Los Angeles street and towed 2 days prior, was registered to 20-year-old singer David Anthony Burke, professionally known as D4vd. Workers reported a foul odor coming from the vehicle, prompting authorities to inspect it. When they opened the trunk, they found a body inside a bag. On September 17th, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office publicly identified the body as Celeste Rivas, a 15-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore, Riverside County. She had been missing since April 2024. The medical examiner has not yet determined a cause of death. The investigation is currently being led by the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division. The body was severely decomposed and appears to have been in the vehicle for an extended period. The teen was described as about 5'1" with wavy black hair, wearing a tube top, black leggings, a yellow metal bracelet, and stud earrings. She had a tattoo on her right index finger reading, "Shh." The Tesla was one of several vehicles registered to David. Sources indicate that different people may have had access to or usage of his cars at various times. Authorities executed a search warrant at a Hollywood Hills home, which the singer was staying in but does not own. Items including a computer and other materials were seized as evidence. David has released no public statement beyond confirming cooperation with law enforcement. Several of his upcoming US tour dates, including shows in San Francisco and Los Angeles, have been cancelled. The status of international dates is unclear. Promotional activity around his music has been paused by his label, and some brands have begun distancing themselves while the investigation continues. Here's what's still unclear: exactly how Celeste Rivas died and how her body came to be in the Tesla's trunk are both unanswered questions. The broader significance and public reaction of the story has stirred strong public interest and concern. Key aspects include the tragic nature of a missing teen case ending in such grim circumstances, the questions being raised about responsibility, chain of custody, who used the vehicle when it was abandoned, and how agencies will piece together forensic evidence. On September 19, 2025, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP, the independent advisory group that helps shape CDC vaccine guidance, held a meeting in which members voted on several important changes regarding COVID-19 vaccine recommendations and discussed possible updates to hepatitis B vaccine policies. Here's what's changing or under consideration: COVID-19. Vaccination recommendations. The panel voted against making a prescription a requirement for obtaining the COVID-19 vaccine. The vote was tied 6-6, and the chair cast the deciding vote to reject the prescription requirement. ACIP unanimously voted to drop the recommendation that all adults ages 18 and older get the COVID-19 vaccine. Instead, vaccine uptake will be based on individual decision-making. People should take into account their own risk of severe COVID versus benefits possible risks. For individuals 6 months to 64 years, the recommendation will be framed such that those with increased risk for severe disease are more likely to benefit. Hepatitis B vaccine. Debate ACIP considered changes to the timing of the first dose of hepatitis B vaccine for infants. Currently, the recommendation is a universal birth dose within 24 hours after birth. The proposed changes under discussion include testing all pregnant women for hepatitis B infection. If the mother is negative, Some proposed delaying the first dose until the infant is at least 1 month old. Allowing earlier vaccination within 1 month based on shared clinical decision-making in certain cases, even if the mother is negative. Thank you for watching, but for now, it's goodbye.